Well, good day, everybody. Welcome to the Bible in the year 2021. We are on day 261, and we're looking at Ezra, chapters 4, 5, and 6, and then Psalm 137. So, uh, so far, so good, right? Well, with all of the work of the Lord, there's going to be opposition. We're in a fallen world. And there's a false prince of this world, and there's no going forward with opposition, but the Lord gives us the strength to overcome that opposition. So we find here in chapter 4, verses 1 to 2, that there are people who want to join in. When the enemies of Judah and Benjamin heard that the returned exiles were building a temple for the Lord, the God of Israel, they came to Zerubbabel and the heads of the families and said to them, "Let's build with you, for we worship your God as you do. And we've been sacrificing to him ever since the days of Assyria's king Ishadon, who brought us here." Which is true. If you remember, when the northern kingdom went into exile, the king of Assyria brought in people to occupy the land. But the Lord sent wild animals upon them, and they were being attacked. So they wanted to know how to sacrifice to Yahweh. So some priests were sent back, but they weren't real priests. They were the false priests, and so they weren't really shown the proper way to worship Yahweh. But it was enough to alleviate the attacks on the people. But they made sacrifices to Yahweh, but they still continue to worship their own gods and make sacrifices to their own gods. So there's a plethora of gods now in the land, and so they come in with this diluted thing, and they think they can join in with the people of Judah, the people coming into Jerusalem now, because they think that they worship Yahweh as they do. That's what's in their thinking. They're also very jealous, and they hate the Israelites, and they just want to be involved in all of this so that they can keep an eye on everything. But the reply from the Jews is very simple. Verse 3, but Zerubbabel, Jeshua, and the rest of the heads of the families in Israel replied, "You'll have no part with us in the building a house for our God. We alone will build, because the Lord, the God of Israel, and Persia's King Cyrus commanded us." So they throw Cyrus in there just so there's some political weight involved in it. But rejection breeds opposition. So they were enemies before, and now even more so. The neighboring peoples discouraged the people of Judah, made them afraid to build, and bribed officials to frustrate their plans. So everything that they could do, they're throwing a monkey wrench into the works. They did this throughout the rule of Persia's King Cyrus until the rule of Persia's King Darius. So, in verse 12 to 13, we find them stirring up some trouble now. They're sending off a letter to Babylon, and it's understood that the way that they've written it, okay, is to imply, not to come out and say it, but to imply that it's not the temple that's being built, but the walls of the city that are being built. And when you read the full letter, you get that. It may be known to the king that the Jews who left you and came to us have arrived in Jerusalem. They are building the rebellious and wicked city. See, they are building the rebellious and wicked city. It's only the temple that they're building. They are completing the walls and repairing the foundations. Yes, of the temple. May it be known to the king that if this city is rebuilt and the walls completed, they will not pay tribute or tax or dues, and the royal revenue will be reduced. So they think that they can get to the king by, and this is Artaxerxes. They think that they can get to the king by threat of the monies. So in verse 21, 22, the gist of the reply from King Artaxerxes is here. Therefore, issue an order to stop these people. This city is not to be rebuilt. They weren't rebuilding the city until I make a decree. Be sure to carry out this order. Why should danger grow and threaten the king? So the result in verse 24, at that time, the work on God's house in Jerusalem stopped and was suspended until the second year of the rule of Persia's King Darius. So Artaxerxes never got around to dealing with, and now it falls on the lap of Darius. This is a hard thing for us to understand when we go to look at this now. When we hear Yahweh's voice, there's a difference between prophets speaking up in the authority of Yahweh and speaking his decree and his word that has been given to them, that they are accountable for, that they have to deliver what he has told them to deliver, or to fall on their heads. So they must do this. They've been tagged as it, and there's a lot of responsibility as a prophet. There's a lot of accountability for it. So it's not a light thing that Haggai and Zechariah stand up and now address the people. It's different than what some people do today, who speak out of their own opinion, and they speak not even in a correct understanding of God's word, where they call out leaders that they have no authority to call out, when they tear down political leaders that they have no authority to tear down. This is something completely different. What Haggai and Zechariah are doing is not calling a rebellion against the king, the political head at this time, but they are telling them that this is an unjust situation, because the previous king they had letters of authority to do this thing. It was God who provoked that king for them to do this. That is still in play. So Yahweh has his prophets stand up and tell the people to continue building, because they have the authority to do so. And by doing this, he's also provoking some things. See, when things like this happen, it's not because we decide to provoke something. It's not because we hope that our actions will cause something to happen. It doesn't work that way. It's because the Lord knows, Yahweh knows what is going to result from him doing this. He already knows what's going to happen. He knew what would happen with Pharaoh when Moses came in and presented the message that he presented. He knew what was going to happen. He provoked that to happen, as he is provoking now through these prophets, for the temple to be finished and paid for, and the thing done. So here we have, I needed to put that disclaimer in there. Verses 1-2 in chapter 5. Then the prophet Haggai and the prophet Zechariah, Iddo's son, prophesied to the Jews who were in Judah and Jerusalem in the name of Israel's God, who was over them. In the name of Israel's God, who was over them. Subsequently, Zerubbabel, Shealtiel's son, and Jeshua, Jozatak's son, began to build God's house in Jerusalem. So they restarted it under the authority of these prophets. God's prophets were with them, helping them. Now, we are going to look at Haggai and Zechariah in the coming days. But understand that they have now provoked the people into action. But there's more provocation that's going on here as well, because this action, what the prophets have now done, is also going to provoke the opposition. So the opposition tried to interfere. Verses 8-10, they write to the king. This is King Darius now. That the king know that we went to the province of Judah, to the house of the great God. It is being built with dressed stone and with timber set into the walls. This work makes good progress and prospers in their hands. We asked those elders who authorized you to build this house and to complete the preparation of this material. We also asked them for their names so that we could write down the names of the leaders for your information. Nice informants, right? But notice here, though, that they are talking about the temple that's being built. This is a different crew now that's interfering. So in verse 17, this is the request to the king. And now, if it seems good to the king, may a search be made in the royal archives in Babylon to see if King Cyrus had issued a decree to rebuild this house of God in Jerusalem. Then may the king be pleased to send us his decision about this matter. Now, Darius is a little more diligent in this matter than Artaxerxes was. And so we find his response here in chapter 6, verses 3-5. And it might be a surprise to the opposition. In the first year of his rule, King Cyrus, this is Darius telling them these things, King Cyrus made a decree concerning God's house in Jerusalem, that the house at the place where they offered sacrifices be built and let its foundation be retained. Its height will be 90 feet and its width 90 feet, with 3 layers of dressed stone and 1 layer of timber. The cost will be paid from the royal treasury. In addition, the gold and silver equipment from God's house, which Nebuchadnezzar took out of the temple in Jerusalem and brought to Babylon, is to be restored. That is, brought back to Jerusalem and put in their proper place in God's house. So now he turns around and Darius deals with this. So now you, Tatine, governor of the province beyond the river, Sheth Bozene, and you, their colleagues, the officials in the province beyond the river, keep away. Leave the work on this house of God alone. Let the governor of the Jews and the elders of the Jews rebuild this house of God on its original site. Yeah, put them in their place. And turn around and look how God pays for the pizza. Okay, verse 8, I also issue a decree about what you should do to help these elders of the Jews as they rebuild this house of God. The total cost is to be paid to these people and without delay from the royal revenue that is made up of the tribute of the province beyond the river. Whoa, just trust the Lord, no matter what it looks like, people. Trust the Lord. He has his way. You try to deal with this, and it's just going to be a bloody situation. It's going to be a real mess. You trust the Lord. You listen. You obey. You pray, and look what happens. He's paid for the whole thing, and he's destroyed the opposition. And look at the consequences. They don't dare come against Darius. I also decree that if anyone disobeys this edict, a beam is to be pulled out of the house of the guilty party, and the guilty party will then be impaled upon it. The house will be turned into a trash heap. May the God who has established his name there overthrow any king or people who try to change this order or to destroy God's house in Jerusalem. I, Darius, have decreed it. Let it be done with all diligence. Now, this is, understand, the laws of these people cannot be changed. They cannot be changed. We saw that with Nebuchadnezzar. We see that, when we get into Esther, you'll see the whole thing with Esther. It cannot be changed. So it's done. It is done. Nothing's going to stop this now. And look at this in verse 14 of chapter 6. So the elders of the Jews built and prospered because of the prophesying of the prophet Haggai and Zechariah, Iddo's son. They finished building by the command of Israel's God and of Cyrus, Darius, and King Artaxerxes of Persia. Yeah. Because of the prophesying of the prophet Haggai and Zechariah. Yeah, that was the provocation. It was the Lord, but it was the obedience of these prophets to speak those words into the people that provoke them and then provoke the enemy that provoke the king. It's amazing stuff. And so the temple is completed, and we read in verse 22, they also joyfully celebrated the festival on unleavened bread for 7 days, because the Lord had made them joyful by changing the attitude of the king of Assyria toward them, so that he assisted them in the work on the house of God, the God of Israel. So the king of Assyria got in on this as well. Yes, incredible stuff. And so we have this love song for Jerusalem that's found in Psalm 137. In Jerusalem, if I forget you, let my strong hand wither. Let my tongue stick to the roof of my mouth if I don't remember you, if I don't make Jerusalem my greatest joy. Yeah. So we're going to be switching over to the prophets again, and we're going to take a look at a little closer at their role in all of this. So you guys have a blessed day. Trust the Lord in all things. Just trust him. Trust him. If he orders the pizza, he'll pay for it. Whatever he tells you to do, he will provide, and he will support and rescue you in, no matter what opposition you face. So just keep going, guys. Love you all, and we'll catch up again tomorrow. God bless.